Hi, Ankita. I can hear you. It's a little bit of eyesight, so that means can't see you.
Good morning, sir. Sorry, I'm not well actually. Tonsils and cough is there, so might be possible. I can't speak. All the best, sir. Hello, ma'am. Hello, Rashmi, ma'am. Hello, Imran, sir.
Hello, ma'am.
The markets that we family emergency or Rajiv sir.
Yes. External post को wait कर रहे हैं.
Ankita, so today it comes to an end.
Finally.
Yes, sir. Finally, today you will be doctor.
I don't know, I don't look like one though.
Yes, sir, but my party will be pending whenever my party is pending. Whenever I will be there, I will take the party.
Sure, that's done. He has come so. Please, madam, मेरा कुछ पड़ा होना है. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you. Hello, Baki.
Good morning, BC sir and Deepak sir.
Good morning, madam. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Puneet Gupta, Research Coordinator at University Dehradun. Today, we all are here for evaluating the final Viva-Voce of Rajiv Sethi on the topic impact of COVID-19 on global economy with special reference to India under the supervision of Dr. Ankita Srivastava. The thesis was evaluated by 3 external examiners: Professor Vijay Pratap Singh, Banaras Hindu University, Professor A.K. Singh, University of Allahabad, and Professor D.K. Sahani, SGRR University. I would like to thank all the examiners or external experts for timely evaluation of the thesis. Thank you, sir. To evaluate the final Viva-Voce, we have panel of both internal and external examiners. As an external examiner, we have Professor Deepak Sahani from SGRR University with us. Welcome, sir, for the final Viva-Voce. We also have Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, as a chairman of the Viva-Voce committee. We also have Dr. Ravin Sharma, Dean IBS, Dr. Rashmi Chaudhary, Academic Coordinator IBS, Dr. Mohammad Imran, Faculty Member IBS as an internal expert. Welcome, sir, ma'am. Now I would like to invite VC sir to say a few words and give permission to start the Viva-Voce.
Thanks to the research cell for doing continuously hard work and maintaining the good quality of research activity in the part of the Dehradun. And he has already introduced the research panel. So without wasting much time, I would like to invite to Brigadier Rajiv Sethi to make the presentation for 45 minutes minimum. And then it will be followed by the question, answer, and discussion and suggestion by the panel members. And then the floor will be open for the rest of the people who are there in the research evaluation. We always encourage to more and more research scholars should attend so that they should be benefited with the latest area of research activity of the university system. So please start.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And firstly, I welcome Dr. Sani and the Vice Chancellor for giving me an opportunity to present the paper. I'm extremely actually grateful to my Dr. Ankita Srivastava, who was my guide, and actually she has been the instrumental fact for providing the quantitative research part of it. That is the complete tools that are required to be carried out. The quantitative research part, because this was a very large amount of it was quantitative. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Muthu Vinay, who was the ex-vice chancellor here, who kind of advised me to pursue the PhD. Before I start, sir, I would like to tell you a little bit about it may be a bit of a surprise that Madam Man is at the end of his life, and why should he be carrying out a PhD? And it's a good amount of work. So, in nutshell, sir, I did my staff college in Army, and I got my MSc Defense and Strategic Studies.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, team.
Mute कर देना, दलित बाकी सब।
Okay, so then because of that, I had to MSc Defense and Strategic Studies, and we had to submit various papers to the strategic digest. And I got into a borderline condition, and I was a medical casualty in 2003. And I cleared the examination for MPhil in JNU in Delhi, and I did my MPhil in International Relations, Diplomatic Studies. Went to Stanford University, and thereby I started continuing to publish papers. And as luck would have it, I got back into the Cabinet Secretariat in Delhi in 2013. In 14, I appeared for their PhD in JNU. Again, cleared their examination and did 3 semesters. I could not complete it because there was some observation by them that it has to be a PhD with that I have given a certificate that I have been spared. But the requirement in JNU is that you are supposed to be a full-time scholar. So they raised an observation. So when I was presenting my synopsis, I had to withdraw. And as luck would have it, I landed up in the academic world again. And I started my PhD work. So with that as a little bit of a opening, I would like to also tell you, sir, that why did I work on this particular topic? That is the impact of COVID. It so happened that as I registered for the PhD at that time, I planned to do it on the international trade, because we did not have a subject of international studies here. And then on March 2020, there was COVID. We were all locked down. And one of the major things that happened, because I had been writing papers, I started thinking as to what is the rationale for like how is this particular thing going to pan out? All of us were very scared. There was uncertainty how the businesses are going to act, how the life is going to be impacted. The health impact was fantastic. So I started studying, and the only options I could get was from the Spanish flu. That was another pandemic that happened in 1918 to 1920, 22 actually. So from there I started getting the data. And I came here and I discussed with the Vice Chancellor, and that is how I selected this topic. With that, sir, my topic today is the impact of COVID-19 on the global economy, with special reference. And I have taken India as the main country to be studied, sir. So as far as the health impact, all of us have gone through this, and therefore there is nothing great that I can put forward. But the major impact that happened was there was a great fear, and all of us were scared, and that is the first this thing itself, sir. That is the first phase. That is on, I think, on 25th March we closed down, and there was a lockdown for a period of around 3 weeks. That was the first one, and it was a very, I think, as they say, that was the strictest lockdown in the world that any country had suffered. So the major impact of the health impacts that were felt was that the first case in India that was discovered was on the March, on January 30th. There was these students who came from Wuhan, who were the medical students, 3 of them. in Kerala. So that was the first case that we had. The first wave, as all of you are aware, since this is a matter which has gone as time has gone by, just to refresh your memory, that the first peak happened around September 2020. Initially, it was thought that India is going to be safe because of the previous, let's say, the conditions that we all have. But in September 2020, we reached a situation of having 19,000 fresh cases every day. And the number of casualties at that particular time were around 2,300 was the peak casualty that happened. As the cases started coming down by December, etc., it was felt that the COVID has gone and everything has kind of stabilized. But then the Delta wave hit, which actually had a very severe impact, and no other country till date has had the number of daily cases apart from China. China is not declaring it. But we started having on 30th April, we had 4 lakh new cases. You know the condition, all of us were very scared because it just did not know whether we were going to survive or not, and there was no hospital beds, nothing was available. So the serious impact was felt in the second wave, wherein there was a severe shortage of beds, oxygen, medical supplies, and everything else. And all of us have gone through it, so you know how bad the situation was. In nutshell, sir, because this particular study actually extends only up to 2021 end, start from March, beginning of, let's say, that is January of 2020 and goes up to 2021. So I will be covering as to what happened later, little later. So at that time, the total number of cases at that particular time, I'm talking of the January of 2022, the total number of cases the world had seen were the total cases seen were approximately around 70 crores, and the total number of deaths that were recorded. This issue I'll cover a little later, that the death reporting part of it. But officially, as per the various countries' meters which are available, actually there is a world meter which is available in the website, which was run by the World Health Organization. Declared that 67.3 lakh people died because of COVID. And in India, the total number of deaths were supposed to be 5.3, that is 4.47 lakhs were at that period. And later on in the third wave, certain number of more people died. That is part of the Omicron part of it. So 5.31 lakh deaths have been reported. The last part of it I will be covering as to what is this particular figure, 47.7 lakhs. Well, when I cover as to what happened, the latest statistics that emerged. The economic impact. Now, the major economic impact that was felt was because of lockdowns. When everything locked down, complete industry stopped, the complete transportation, the complete education sector, everything stopped. So that was the maximum impact was felt in the quarter, that is the last quarter of 2020, that happens to be from January to March. And the impacts were the world went through the second largest global recession. The first recession that happened was in 1930, that was called the Great Depression. So this was the second largest global recession that the world had seen. There was 7% drop in the complete commercial activities. This I am talking of the complete period, that is later on the activity improved. Initially, the downfall was nearly everything had stopped. The business losses, and I'm talking of the period when everything restarted. But in the end of 2021, the total business losses were to the tune of 25% of revenue. And 11% of the workforce was out of work. As far as India was concerned, it suffered the largest amount of impact of GDP contraction. That it became minus 24% in a particular quarter. This is the quarter I am talking about, January to March quarter. The economy contracted by minus 24%. There was a sharp rise in unemployment, and we lost approximately the beginning. We lost at the max 24 crore jobs were lost. The problem in the reporting in India is that these are the reported cases when from the organized sector. That is I'm talking about the factories, the various organized sector. The actual losses that we cannot quantify were from the unorganized sector. That is I'm talking about the shops, the people who are barbers, etc., etc. So those losses, in case they are taken into consideration, it is said that nearly 60% of the population lost jobs during that lockdown. The tourism collapsed. It was the worst recession since independence. But by December 2021, the GDP was back to the pre-COVID levels. That is, we had again had at this time the yearly GDP was reported to be 6.7%, which was happening before 2017 onward. We have been going through a little bit of from 7, it had come down to 6.7, it was back to 6.7. The last impact is the socio-political impact. Now, the socio-political impact actually means that what was the kind of overall, what was the feeling in the world, or what were we feeling in actually? There was a sense of isolation because we were locked down. There was a sense of insecurity because job losses that happened. All businesses, schools, as you are aware, there is nothing to be told on this. So job losses were there, no means of entertainment, travel restrictions, spread of panic and fear. This was all of us have faced. As far as the political this thing was concerned, the fact is that there was a lot of rise of authoritarianism, that you will not move from your houses. Everybody was being arrested if they were seen anywhere in public places. And it largely became a surveillance state because all of us had to kind of maintain, and especially some of the countries, including India largely also, that you had to keep giving your data to Ayushman Bharat, okay, how many cases, etc., and you were kind of everybody, all your moves were being watched. Next. As far as the global scenario is concerned, I'll just quickly go over it. The major points which are to be concerned, so there are.
Sorry, sir, to interrupt in between. Is it the
environment?
Excuse me, sir.
The
Excuse me, sir.
improved considerably. The quality of air, the water, there was a
Puneet, sir.
ecosystem improvement, the ozone layer hole which had been there for centuries.
Puneet, sir.
Now kind of closed down because of there was no ozone production. The stock market value. Now, all of us who are investing, etc., would know that in the month of March of 2020, the Sensex value was at around approximately 52,000. And within a period of 40 days, it had gone down to 28,000. There was such a drastic fall, but that I'll cover later, that surprisingly, because all the countries started pumping in money to kind of bolster the economy, it resulted by the time the COVID finished, that is, I'm talking about the December of 2021, they had already reached a level which they had never seen, that reached a level of 60,000. Unemployment, as I mentioned to you, this point I have already covered. Economic deficit. Now, the deficit always happens when the total GDP versus what is the expenditures which are there. So, India, the world actually went through a deficit of -3%, and India went through a deficit of -7.3%, 7.8%.
Sir, are you screen on or you have given title slides? You can get against. वो वर्ड फाइल नहीं शो होगी ना स्क्रीन शेयर
ना
मोटर पे से हटा दो ना पावर पॉइंट बोर्ड पे से हटा दो तो विजिबल हो जाएगी मैनुअली तुमको वहां से चेंज करना पड़ेगा
तो सर अभी पावर पॉइंट पे
बोर्ड पे से हटा दो
स्क्रीन पे है ना तो टोटल
स्क्रीन शेयर कर दीजिए F5 एक्सेल से बाहर आ जाए
और एक बार मैम से पूछना है म्यूट करके It's visible, ma'am?
No, sir. Nothing is visible right now.
Slide shows now. We have an
So shall I? So shall I rejoin?
Is it visible now? You please check.
I think it's visible for me, sir, at least. The presentation screen is visible for me.
No, it's showing that you're viewing IOD Learn screen, but nothing is visible. It's completely blank for me.
Then, ma'am, I think you should rejoin because I can see the presentation in
Okay,
front of
I'm
me.
rejoining, sir, once again.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, should I continue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Next. Okay, go back. So coming to the, we have already covered the global scenario. Next. Now, this portion also I have already covered as per the health and social impacts that have happened in India and the economic impacts I have already covered. Now, as far as the impact on industry, separate industries was concerned, as you are aware that the maximum hit was taken by the hospitality sector since there was no move permitted. The tourism sector, there was no transportation, no aircrafts, nothing was permitted. So they nearly tanked totally. Aviation and travel sector, automobile sector, again, because of sudden production requirements and there was no vehicle movement, etc. So automobile sector was the fourth sector which suffered the maximum. The fifth sector that suffered was the real estate and the construction sector because people were not allowed to move out of their homes. So there's no construction took place during that time. And the last sector that got affected was manufacturing. The only sector that did not get affected was agriculture. That was one sector which the government also kind of made sure that people were allowed to work on the fields, and that is the only sector that grew during that time. Next. So coming to the literature review now, basically what I did was that I started working on whatever was the previous information that was available to find out as to what is going to be the impact of COVID. So 2-3 things that I needed to carry out were related with the next. These two things were what I concentrated on, that I had to study these two papers on from the various resources. So one was the effect of the previous pandemics on the world economy. Now, there were actually 2-3 major, they were not pandemics, but they were considered, they have been classified as pandemics, that is H1N1, which happened in the period of 2001 to 2003. So certain amount of data was available, but that had not spread, and the total number of deaths that took place was just about 8,000. But the major impact which I could study was from 3 major things, but the main data available was of the 1918 to 20, that is the period of when we had the this Spanish flu. From where the data has, we could compare that, okay, this pandemic happened, which spread all over India. But just for your information, India had lost 50 lakh people during that pandemic. And the second data I concentrated was on the world and Indian economy per se. One thing was that the impact of the health impact, and the second was on the various economies that had happened. So with that as the aims, that I started studying, and I'll just cover a few of them because I started taking the secondary data, which was the reliable data which was available from various sources. And like the first one, COVID-19 and the trade policy. Why turning inwards? Like if you start considering your, start looking inwards, why it won't work? Because you had to start looking at the national international economy before you could start thinking about the Indian economy. So it covered the countries affected by COVID-19, which were the major countries, which were in trade. They were the top countries, that is the China, United States, Korea, Japan, France, Italy, and the United Kingdom. They account for 65% of the world export and manufacturing. And we had to consider whether these kind of what has happened to them is going to continue to affect India or not. And like I mentioned to you, 1918 influenza pandemic and its lessons for COVID-19, this gave a very good amount of information about how it is going to. So it reviews the global health and the economic consequences of 18 influenza pandemic with a particular focus on topics that have seen a renewed interest because of this thing. So I will not cover all of them. Sir. So basically, these are some of the major papers which were considered for carrying out my analysis. The economic impact of the influenza, which actually largely you will be surprised that the data, what happened, the kind of lockdown in 1918 resulted in actually the Great Depression also. And then this one, COVID-19 impact on the Indian economy. Next. Economic effect of coronavirus on the world economy and reshaping the global supply chain. This is one of the biggest things that has happened while the country suffered a lot was suddenly because of the lockdowns, the supply chain stuff, the stuff that was coming from various countries, and India realized that largely we are dependent on the world realized that China was the manufacturing hub and China had lockdown. So this resulted in the complete bottlenecks as far as the supply chains were concerned, and which has been actually, I'll cover with you as to how it has helped India. The IMF annual report was one of the primary sources which gave actually as to how exactly the pandemic has impacted the countries. And the critical supply shortages, which I just mentioned, that supply shortages happened because of dependence on the one particular country. So from there we emerged that what were the research gaps? The research gaps have been that there haven't been any studies carried out that include an in-depth analysis of the global economy with relation to India. They have of some of the economies which are directly affected, but there is nothing which covered the global economy with relation to India. There are very few studies which concentrate the empirical work relating to the changes in the commerce and private consumption of Indians. Basically, if you will realize that GDP is not only the production of the goods, but actually the consumption of the goods. So the consumption of Indians data was not available. There was no study that had provided a detailed framework of components that contribute to the fight against COVID-19. Because COVID-19 was something very new. So we were still emerging as to how to contain such a major pandemic that if it happens again also. With these research gaps, I came out with the research objectives. The research objectives that were formed were to measure the spread of COVID-19 cases in different economies of the world. This was done through a quantitative analysis, which I will just be covering, to measure the impact of COVID-19 on the global economy, and to analyze the impact of trade and consumption on the Indian economy during COVID-19, and to suggest the integrated framework to combat COVID-19 pandemic. With these as the research objective, I will just cover as to the research methodology that was followed, sir. As far as the research methodology followed was, I followed a system of quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative basically required the data from various places, and the qualitative requirement was for some of these requirements which required as to what exactly has happened in the past, and as well as the studying as to what exactly is going to happen. And the secondary data was used, as you are aware that there was no this thing available, and research design for each objective design is as mentioned. So I will be covering as far as the first part is concerned, that is the objective one. The objective one was to measure the spread of COVID in different economies of the world. Now, as far as this objective was concerned, sir, back. The hypothesis was that from the World Bank, we could get that there are 4 different, because there were 217 countries which are available. The World Bank has divided them into 4 sets of countries, that is the poor income countries, the middle income countries, the upper middle income countries, and the upper income countries. With that, sir, how we have gone about is that was the hypothesis to achieve the objective. The main hypothesis frame was that there is a significant difference in the number of COVID cases among different economies of the world. You will be surprised actually that some of the richest countries, when we carried out the analysis, some of the richest countries, in fact, the most developed countries had the maximum number of cases and the maximum number of deaths. Just to give you a small example, America, which is a population of 36 million people, had the total number of, they were the most affected country in the complete COVID and had cases to the tune of approximately 10 crore 40 lakhs. And they had the maximum deaths also. They had a total death rate of the total number of people who died because of COVID as per records existed approximately 10 lakh 80,000 people. Whereas India, with our kind of population, the second most affected was Brazil. And the third most affected was India. And as per the Indian government statistics, the total number of people, as I mentioned, who suffered was 5 crore 64 lakhs, 5 crore 64 lakhs, and total deaths were to the tune of 5 lakh 31,000. So, as far as the objective, how it has been achieved is that the study period considered was 22nd January to 30th November 2021. That is 22nd January 20. And daily data has been considered for the duration. As I mentioned to you, the secondary data has been used, and the research methods was the aim was to examine the difference in the number of COVID cases as per the economies classified. I mentioned to you that 4 different kind of classification was there. To achieve this, the ANOVA has been applied, and further to test the particular group where the differences lies, positive analysis was considered. The test for multiple comparisons were selected as per the result of ANOVA, and the most common test when equal variances was not assumed were the Gibbs-Howell and the Hannon T2. So, on that, I would like to just say that my knowledge on this particular tools was very limited, and I must be grateful to the my guide who carried out all the quantitative analysis in this particular case. Coming to objective 2, that was to analyze the impact on the global economy. Earlier, the impact was taken on the health part of it. Now, the second part was to analyze the impact on the global economy. On this, the various factors considered were the macro. This was basically done in a qualitative fashion. And the effect were considered on the macroeconomic, that is the country's GDP and the macroeconomics things. I'm sure you are aware of it. And the microeconomic effects which impact the individuals. The negative impacts that the world had gone through, that is the basically talking about transportation, the various kind of impacts on the health, and the positive impacts, which were basically, as I mentioned, were more related to the environment. The third objective was to analyze the impact on trade and commerce on the Indian economy during the COVID-19. Now, we considered 3 major things. That is, as you are aware, that the GDP is actually a sum total of the total production of a country. So we considered the impact on the trade and consumption of the Indian economy by carrying out an analysis as to what has been the total impact on how the GDP had gone down and how it had started recovering. The impact on trade, it must be brought out that during this period, one of the biggest things that happened was because of non-movement of goods, and trade contributes to a very large extent of the GDP also. So the import and export components, they went into a great amount of variance. The countries where India exports the maximum, that is the EU, that had altogether stopped accepting anything, and we continue to be dependent for the energy resources, etc. So suddenly there was a great mismatch between the import and export. As far as consumption was concerned, it is to be brought to your notice that we realized that because of the uncertainty, because of the fear, and because of job losses, the consumption patterns of the complete Indian economy went through a major change. The objective 4 was to suggest an integrated framework to combat COVID-19 pandemic. There were two major things which we were able to reach. That is the economic interventions and the technological interventions. If you have to overcome a particular condition like the COVID or this pandemic, we have another case or if the case continues, the major objective was to find out what are the economic interventions. And what we realized was that while we were studying this, was that the economic interventions relate to, because people will lose their earning power. So a certain amount, three major things have to be done. One is that the nation has to start investing in the major projects where the employment is created. That there is a great amount of need for a poor country to have direct transfer instead of direct transfers. What happened in the case of India was that 80 crore people were being given free rations for a period of, and it continues even now actually. So that's how a very large amount of economic interventions. I'll be covering them in the later part also in my conclusion. And the technological interventions were that you have to have the only way in which you can come to know a particular place is going through the large number of COVID cases, etc., is through means such as we have of the Ayushman Bharat, where you could actually come to know which all areas are being affected. Results and findings. I have generally covered that, sir. The macroeconomic effects on the global output exports were, as I mentioned to you, that this complete year, actually, I mentioned to you of a particular quarter where minus 24% of GDP had gone down. The GDP for 2020-21, India was the worst sufferer in the world. Our economy for the whole year contracted to minus 7.3. And the world economy just went down still as positive at 2.8 as per World Trade Organization. And India also accepts this particular figure. However, as I mentioned to you, in 21-22, as the jobs came into the market, and despite the fact that we had the second wave, we still continued to grow. And actually, you will be surprised, during the major COVID, that is the Delta wave, the lockdown didn't happen. And because that time the feeling was that the word that was used, kadai or basically we have to continue to survive. So the economy recovered to 6.7%. In this particular period, however, we still lost around 14 crore jobs. And all the rating agencies, Moody's as well as the other rating agencies, India was considered to be, there is a rating called BBB plus. From there, our rating was reduced to BBB minus, that is the lowest grade for investment purpose, which has a serious impact as far as the economy is concerned. But we must consider the government response to it. That 80 crore people were covered under the food security scheme. All of you are aware of this. And which resulted and which cost the government of, I'm talking about the economic intervention that we have carried out, that $21 billion were earmarked for this. Direct cash transfers. Most of these states, they started having a direct transfer to the people below the poverty line. In Ujjwala Yojana, there is the gas transfers, approximately 300,000 people were given free gas cylinders during this period. Another way to ensure that all the MSMEs and all the industries, they don't tank up, was that we kept reducing the repo rate. The repo rate, which was there in 2020, was to the tune of around 6.5%. And at the end of the, let's say 2021, it had come down to just around 3.5%. And there was so much of cut. This is basically being done so that the loans are available at a cheaper rate to people. And as you are all aware, and some of you may have been benefited from this, that the payment of all the loans, the installments and everything was kind of reduced. Was told that, okay, it can be done later. The taxes were shifted by 6 months. As far as the microeconomic impacts were concerned, sir, that as far individuals are concerned, there was around 14 crore jobs that were lost. The health impact I have already covered with you. The restriction on movement, etc., is already covered, sir. As far as the government action at the level of individuals was concerned, that it was one of the largest vaccination program was launched in January 21. Initially, it opened up for the health workers. Within a month, it was for people above 60, and by March, it was open to everybody for vaccination. The about 35,000 crores sanctioned by the government for the purpose of vaccination. The phase 3 of vaccination, like I mentioned to you in May 2021, was open to all. By October 21, 1 billion doses, that is 700 million doses single and 300 million doses for people who have had 2 vaccinations was already done. And can you imagine, this was in 1 year's time, this much of vaccination was done by the government. And the latest reports indicate that this is the report from the World Health Organization, that because of timely vaccinations, 4.2 million, that is approximately 42 lakh people were saved due to vaccination program. The damaging effects of COVID-19 I have already covered. Actually, those issues that happened, the health issue, the other impact, the impact on jobs, etc., I have already covered. And the advantageous impacts again, so they can't be quantified, but the fact is that a great amount of changes took place, and we have all seen it also. So I'll not go into that. Next. Conclusion and recommendations, sir. The major recommendations that have emerged after the complete study have been, sir, that there has been a great amount of disparity as far as the handling of this particular pandemic happened. All the developing countries, etc., they started because they had that kind of financial muscle. Just for your information, that $700 per week per individual were pumped by America into the individuals, and that resulted later on in a great amount of financial movement of money into the developing markets, and that's how the markets have taken off. The poorer countries like India, we followed a different policy. We started providing free rations to the individuals, and also 1,000 rupees transfer, etc., which had happened to the people below poverty line. The crisis management immediate response of the government was altogether different. Like I just mentioned, that some people pumped money, some people did not, and similar was the impact that was faced. Is that there was the problem on the how to handle the health also. Some countries became insular. They stopped giving any kind of supplying anything to any other country. India also, which had promised a lot of vaccinations, sorry, this COVID, Covaxin and etc., had to restrict its hands. Then there was a growing danger to a fair recovery. Everybody was insecure about it, whether this thing is going to last, whether how long it is going to last. And there was a insecurity, and the fact is that some countries have recovered. Like as you are well aware, that the impact has been after the COVID finished. A lot of countries are facing serious trouble, like the case of even Sri Lanka. The impact has been that the people did not have enough of the resources available for paying for the purchase of the items. The similar thing is even Bangladesh is also doing. Most of the sub-Saharan Africa is going through this. The elevated inflation. Now, this is one of the major impacts. What happened was that when the money got pumped into the people's accounts, that has resulted in a major amount of inflation. The present situation in the world is that we were going through very severe, and the result was that 2022, the Feds have increased from around 0%, which was their rate. Now it has come down to 4.5%. India, which had around 3% as when the repo rate had gone down, has reached now 6.75%. So what is the impact basically is because everything became very costly. And as you are aware, the second reason for this, of course, was the Ukraine war, which resulted in the energy crisis also. changing interest rates. I just covered this part, how the interest rates have been changing, because when the repo rate changes, automatically some of you who have loans, etc., would have seen that your loan outgoes have suddenly increased drastically. The banking sector went through a great amount because once the lockdowns happened, everybody stopped paying money. The industry was not able to pay to the banks, and therefore there was a lot of NPAs. Fortunately, as the economy has opened up, the NPAs have reduced considerably. Though I have covered this issue, but the major issues that stance that the government has taken, I'll just cover as to how much money that was funded during this time. The Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, it mostly relates to the two things. That is, firstly, the rations that were given. That was about 80 crore people being given rations for a period of now third year. So this is only 1 year account, that is 2.76 lakhs were given. Free food gain was given to 80 crore people. Cooking gas, as I mentioned to you, Ujjwala Yojana to 8 crore people. Direct cash transfers which were done to various people's account were to the tune of 40 crores. The Manrega, that is the Mahatma Gandhi Yojana, wherein you provide to the village areas, etc., where there is a certain amount of 100% employment generated for a certain amount of work being given. The amount spent was 323.19 crores. And this is Garib Kalyan Yojana Abhiyan had this much of money. Collateral free loans that were given to the MSMEs, because MSMEs suffered a great amount of damage. So 3 lakh crores were given for MSMEs. Farmers additional emergency capital, you may be aware that every 6 months, 6,000 rupees are being transferred into the farmers account who are registered. And PLI, that is the production linked incentives. Now, this was basically because of Atmanirbhar Bharat. What happened is that once the semiconductor industry was totally based in the area of China, once the semiconductors stopped coming, because they were locked down, so it resulted in a great amount of problem. Nothing was being produced. As you may be aware, the cars, etc., the waiting period became 6 months. So the government came out with a plan of something called production linked incentive. 14 sectors were identified, and they have been given certain incentives to carry out work to increase the production and make India self-sufficient. So coming to now, I'll just discuss for, this is open to discussion, that this is the situation. I was talking till now what happened in the period of till 2021 December, which was the period that I have kind of my thesis was. However, the COVID did not subside. After that, in 2020, we had Omicron waves. A number of us went through it, but because of vaccination, most of us survived. The death rate was very minimal. However, there is always, when there is so much of illness, it has an impact on the number of people who are not able to come for work, etc. So the present situation, I'll just say, is that impact on the public health. Majorly, India has been able to overcome the major problems that were suffered during COVID because of vaccination. There has been an improvement. The Indian total, let's say the GDP, which is, the budgetary allocation has been normally 3%. 1.5% used to be the budgetary allocation towards the health sector. It has been increased to around 5%. So the hospitals, if you remember, there was most of the hospitals started having liquid oxygen storage tanks, this, that, and all. So largely there has been a feeling that the public health needs to be, the sector needs to be improved. And because of that, they have increased the number of vacancies of specialists, etc. also. And as far as the health or impact of the economy is concerned, it's to the credit of the government of the way it has been handled, that we are back to the path of something like a growth path, which was supposed to be actually in 2021-22 was declared to be 7.5, but it finally came down to around 6%, 6.2%. And for 22-23, that is, which is coming to an end now, it was initially projected to be 9%. but it has been now downgraded to approximately 7.1%. So these are the research papers, sir, and here I come to the end of my briefing on my thesis.
Thank you, sir, for the detailed presentation. Now, first of all, I would like to invite Professor Deepak Sahni, sir, for the comments and suggestions.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving me an opportunity to express my opinion with regard to the thesis which has been submitted by Brigadier Rajiv. Although I have gone through this particular thesis at length and I studied your work and I gave my comments also that it is a commendable job which you have already done in this particular thesis. A few points I have already highlighted in my report also. I think you have covered that in your presentation. That was the impact of the COVID-19 on the financial sector part. So, and I think you have covered the points related to the Sensex movement. Yes. Right. So that was originally not covered in the thesis, but you have covered it. So that's a great thing. A few points which I have analyzed while going through your presentation. You mentioned in your presentation that it was the agriculture sector which was open and it was doing the job well. Besides agriculture, the dairy products were also there. So that's actually part of the just to put a point across. And then the research gaps which you have already identified that are already mentioned in the thesis. But one point just came to my mind while you were discussing the presentation at length, that you have actually taken the comparison of the 1918 pandemic with that of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's almost a gap of around 100 years, right? And the economy has shown drastic changes during those 100 years also. So this opens up a scope for further research also, that during the 1918 pandemic, the economy went into Great Depression. The whole world economy went into Great Depression later on. It was around in 1929. Yes. But after this particular pandemic, the economy or the world economy did not went into depression. Right. So what are those factors which led to that particular depression at that particular time? And what are the positive impacts or the factors which are available so that we recovered out of those negative impacts and the economy, and we faced that particular situation and the economy recovered very fast. Within a gap of around 2 years, we recovered that. So I think that also gives us an insight that we could also study that particular portion also, right? And then you have mentioned rightly that the number of deaths which have taken place in the advanced countries of the world, that is in America you were talking about, right? Then Brazil you were talking about. So have you studied that what is the population in those countries, the COVID cases and the number of deaths? Yes. The population in India, the number of COVID cases and the number of deaths. Yes. So if you have done it. Right. Just to give you a little answer. Yes. So the total population of America is considered to be 36 million. Okay. This is nearly 1/4 of us. Yeah. And they have very advanced country actually as far as the effect. And the total deaths they have reflected is the cases that suffered were 10 crores, and whereas we have said 5 crores. The deaths they had was nearly 1% of it. That is, they have had 10 lakh deaths. Okay. And we have had around, we reflect around 1% or less than that, around 5 lakhs. So I've studied that. So I've studied any specific reason behind this? Although that was an advanced country of the world, and I'll give you. I've studied that in a great amount of detail. Now that you ask, the real reason was firstly is reporting. The World Bank, which I said I will cover a little later at the end, was that sir, as far as the World Health Organization, India suffered 47.1, that is 47 lakh people died because of COVID. Okay. India maintains that we don't agree to that, and we have had 5 lakh deaths. I think all of us, we have gone through Omicron and or any other this thing, we never reported to the government also. Whereas the reporting system in the Western world is very, very much stronger than us. So one major reason why this disparity has come is because of that reason of reporting. Second reason is because the demographic structure. America, the average age right now is approximately 47 years, the average age of the population. Okay. India has 24.5. Our average age is 24.5. So we are very young country. So the number of people, most of the people who died had comorbidities, and because of that, they could not take the lung infection. So therefore, the number of deaths in the developed world have been disproportionately high compared to what has happened to, let's say, a country with a younger profile. These two major reasons are the major reason. This was one of the major things when I started studying. I said, how is it possible that Europe, Italy, but out there also the average age is supposed to be 52. There are countries like Japan, where the average age is around 57 years. I mean, and India is 25. So automatically the death rate has been much less. Second is, of course, reporting, and we know very well, Ganga, lots of bodies were floating, this, that, people died, nobody reported. And in these countries, the reporting is much higher. So that was the reason.
I can also add one point to it. I think that the immunity system of Indian people is different.
I'm not very sure of it was. But yes,
You can go to that Arabic place at Bombay and you see the number of people who are residing in that particular place. Yes, the density of population which is there. And
the possibility that also maybe the.
yes,
We are not so used to also cleanliness.
yes, obviously. Obviously. That's all from my side. It was a nice visit.
Thank you so much, sir, for your comments and the future direction. Now I would like to invite Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for their comments and visits.
Of course, this was a very timely study, and everything was happened in a last few years or so. So in fact, it was a quite challenging work, and not many issues have been brought out and taken as a research program. A lot of research elements has evolved over this study. And maybe in the times to come, the challenges will be the new research about the mitigating policies, because certain kind of the consequences even we are not aware at present what are the side effects of COVID, and then the kind of vaccine we took and so many other things. So lot many research can be carried out in the times to come on the mitigating measures, which are certain unforeseen situations which will come in the future. So I congratulate to Brigadier Rajiv Sethi carrying out this particular work and bringing out so many research issues and the possible solution also. So thank you so much, Dr. Ankita Srivastava, for supervising on the quantitative aspect nicely. And I hope that the work will further keep going on with some more research scholars where this particular study will be useful to carry out in further. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
For your comments and directions. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Ankita Srivastava, Supervisor, for their comments and suggestions.
So my comment is only one. Congratulations to Dr. Rajiv Sethi and to the whole ICFA University. And I would like to extend my gratitude to Puneet sir as well, that he has helped a lot in completion of the PhD. And Vice Chancellor sir, and again, I'm very thankful to Deepak sir. He has again extended his support. And as far as the thesis is concerned, he has worked a lot, and wherever the support was required, I have given my support there. And we are expecting to come up with more publications in future. All the best, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Ravin Sardin, IBS, for their comment and suggestions.
Thank you, sir. First of all, sir, many congratulations. It was an excellent and very informative presentation. I have a couple of questions, but one question has already been addressed by Dr. Sahani. It was very interesting to know that during the presentation I shared that the GDP has recovered. In most places of the world, GDP has recovered. But what would you say about the per capita GDP? Can throw some more light on it? That will be a good area for interest.
Okay, sir, I will carry out a good amount of, because this was one of those things which I needed to actually, once we, as you are aware that now we are considered to be the 5th largest GDP in the world. It has happened recently. So the total GDP that has been reflected has been approximately $3.29 trillion. Now we are at 3.29 trillion this thing. But what is more interesting is that what is the per capita GDP? And you will be surprised that the per capita GDP India has is 2029, $2,129, which is where we rank 142nd in the world per capita GDP. Because the GDP is to be divided by the number of people, and then you get the per capita GDP. In converting it to money, it means approximately 1,50,000 rupees, 1,54,700 rupees comes across as the per capita GDP per year. What it means in nutshell, if you say, is that per person would be per month earning approximately around 13,000 rupees. But that's not so. The interesting part that comes out is that India's top 1% people own 52% of the total wealth of the country, and top 10% people own 76.8% of the total wealth of the country, and we happen to be all part of the top 10 actually. So what happens to, that's why we are 26.8% people are below poverty line. And below poverty line, as per the Rangarajan Committee report of 2011, is just around 1,200 rupees per person in the urban area and 984 rupees in the rural area. This is the monthly income per capita. But that is because 2017 this thing was again done, but they were not allowed to, government didn't allow it to come out. So 2011 Rangarajan Committee had sat, and this is what there is. So the answer to your question is that there is a great amount of income disparity. And the per capita income, even if you don't take into consideration the per capita GDP, we are still 142nd in the world, whereas in total GDP terms, we are 5th in the world. But there is another factor that comes, which I'll just take a minute, is basically to do with GDP is also considered in PPP terms. That is the purchasing power parity terms. And there we are something like 11 trillion economy. But I'll not go into great details on that. The fact is that we are a poor country.
Very good, sir. Very good piece of information. And there's a huge space for the future research also in your work. May I appreciate you, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Rashmi Chaudhary ma'am for the comments.
Congratulations, sir. So we know that your knowledge and your comments are not only valuable to us, they are valuable to the government of India also. So, my question is that I would like to know that now there is a drastic improvement in the GDP. If we see the previous years, it is 6.7, now it is above 7. So do you think that now Indian economy is out of the impact of the COVID?
Yes, ma'am. The answer to your question is that what we are going through, or what is like, if you say that will it going to continue to be with that 6.7 or 7 or some higher percentage, India is supposed to grow as one of the largest economies in the world, one of the larger economies that's going to continue to do well. But the major pitfall that is likely to happens to be related to the energy sector. In case the war between let's say Ukraine and Russia does not cease, in case there is some more pressure, then automatically the chances. I'm just taking into consideration that COVID impact is over and done with. But this is the way the Indian economy is generally on a good path, and likely, as per all the statistics, it's supposed to by 2030 supposed to become the third largest economy. But it is based on 2-3 major factors which can impact India. That one happens to be the problem related to Ukraine, and second is we are having a severe economic deficit because all this money that has been taken on loans from the various agencies. So the budget deficit is just 7.4% this year as per the reflected this thing. But it was supposed to be below 4%. So it has gone up drastically. So, but then it is expected that things are going to stabilize.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Ma'am, now I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Imran.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, sir, happily congratulations to you. And as per our question, sir, you given 3 recommendations, sir. So which specific recommendation you feel so, sir, is more relevant for further scope of research? So that is research scholars can think about it.
I would say the recommendation related to the issues of the point that has been brought up, that as far as the individual GDP etc. is concerned, which way is the Indian economy going to be moving? Because there is a severe poverty, there is a lot of imbalance of income. So therefore, it is important that we carry out a justification as to how to reduce this imbalance, because this also results in a great amount of there can be a lot of what's happening in case of Brazil and number of these countries, where there can be an uprising when the gap keeps increasing between the poor and the rich. So that's the important area of study as to how to bring that down.
I think, sir, the taxation system needs to be reformed.
Yes.
Because a few weeks back, I was listening to the speech of our honorable Prime Minister Rajiv, and there he was mentioning that around 5 to 7% people in India are only who are paying the taxes. That is the direct taxes. And how can you imagine a country, a huge country, having a population of, let's say, around 140 crores, and there only 5% of the people are paying the taxes. And if you carry out a survey, then they find that most of the people, the rich people who are there, they are moving out of the country also, and are paying foreign visits also, having good vehicles, houses and all. But still the tax which they are paying in comparison to the income which they are earning is quite less. So it is the rich who are favored indirectly.
There is one more insight, sir, to this. Like, say, for example, only 4 to 5% people they are direct taxes.
Yeah.
But then the reality might be like this, say, for example, only 4 to 5, maximum 8%, like you were also mentioning in the presentation. Then we are only 10% who own more than close to 80% of the resources. So the real picture is this: indirect taxes are paid by everyone, even the poorest of the poor. That's what the direct people might not be coming to the taxable slab. They're earning actually on the ground, as he says that actually they are a poor country. We might not be into the taxable slab. That's the reason that only 4, 5, 6% people are paying tax. Direct taxing, direct everyone gets.
Yeah, I'm talking about direct taxes.
So the idea that has come is basically wealth tax.
Income tax.
That has already been happened.
This is what they are considering this time. That again start that after a certain then let's say you have a certain amount of property, etc. You have a wealth tax. Because the richer have so much of wealth that they cannot hide it now. But that's something which is being discussed.
Okay, now the floor is open for the faculty members and scholars who have joined online. Itisa, Pauline, any question?
For you, sir, or
Yes.
for Brigadier Sethi?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying for Puneet sir or Brigadier Sethi.
For me.
For the candidate.
Sorry, sir.
For the
For the
candidate.
candidate. No, sir. I don't have any question for Brigadier Sethi. The presentation was really nice and it was insightful too. And congratulations, Brigadier Sethi.
Thank you, Nisha.
Thank you, Itisa. Thank you, Pauline. So on behalf.
But sir, Puneet sir, I do have a lot of questions for you. I will connect with you.
After the presentation.
Yes, sir, of course. Thank you.
So on behalf of all the panel members, first of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Rajiv Sethi for the nice and detailed presentations. I also would like to thank the Professor Deepak Sahni sir for their time. I also would like to thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor sir for their directions to the research lab. I also would like to thank to Dr. Ankita Srivastava and the internal experts, Ravin sir, Speaker and Imran. So thank you all for joining the Viva-Voce. Thank you. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you and thank you, Ankita.
So let us have a formal clap and congratulations.
Congratulations, sir, once again. Congratulations,
Thanks.
officially doctor now. Though he had a lot of knowledge, but now the title will prove.
And
Thank you, Puneet sir, and thank you, VC sir. for this opportunity. Now with that, two PhDs under me comes to an end. And now I am the co-guide for Aishwarya. So now we will be waiting for that. Thank you so much.
Madam, and being away from the system, you are still helping the system, and we are grateful for that.
So I will be happy. I will be really happy to be always a part, either directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
So
You can
that's
always be remain connected with the ideas, especially to
Sure.
help business scholars. Thank you so much.
sure.
Thank you, ma'am.